Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to what used to be called the Monday Roundup, and which we have now decided to retitle Intelligence Report. Today is the Intelligence Report with Shrink4Men.com and AVoiceForMen.com. Today is Monday, March 24th, 2014. With me, as always, is the talented and tenacious Dr. T. Say hi, Dr. T.
I can't keep up. Last week I was a labia trader. The week before that I was fabulous. So, okay, whatever. Hi.
Hi. And some just the most horrible human being I have ever met in my entire life, Mr. Paul Elam. Say hello, you horrid monster, you.
Oh, I thought you were introducing Dr. T again. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
She's only the second most horrible person I know. Okay, so we got a lot going on here today, including a lot of last-minute stuff. Last week's Monday Hangout, again, we've changed the name to Intelligence Report just because we thought Monday Roundup was a little boring. Plus, if you think
it doesn't mean that we're any more intelligent, however.
Well, no, the real reason that the name changed is because two of the three people here are not from Texas and can't qualify to do a roundup, but we won't get into that too much.
But two of us are intelligent.
Do not want to try to round up anything.
Actually, I am.
Round up some intelligence, Dean.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. And if anybody out there thinks there's a sly reference to the SPLC in that title, you would be correct. Anyway, so last week on the Roundup, we talked a lot about Congressman Alan Grayson and his obviously false charges of domestic violence. Well, probably false. Certainly, he was at least a victim at minimum. But what's the update on that, Dr. T?
Charges have been dismissed, and he issued a statement saying something to the effect that, actually, if you give me a moment, I can pull that up.
You know, go ahead, pull it up. We'll wait. I'll just sit here and suck on my vape.
Go for it. It doesn't matter. Anyways, mostly because I can't find it. Like
I bet his statement doesn't matter.
I have 20 windows open right now on my computer, so it'll take me some time. I'll probably still be.
Women can't do math. Women can't do math or organize their tabs. That's my conclusion.
But a therapist can paraphrase, so why don't you lay that on us, Tara?
I shall. Basically, the charges were dismissed, and he issued a statement that it was false, they were baseless, and he hopes that the media will afford him and his family the privacy needed to heal from whatever. I did a little more digging on Grayson, and it turns out in 2012 he had a Republican opponent by the last name of Long, forgetting his first name, who had been going through a divorce, and Grayson was quoted giving an interview saying, well, if you want to ask him a question, you should ask him when he stopped beating his wife, which is interesting because that was, I believe, the title of our hangout last week. So this guy, I had sympathy for him. It's beginning to wane. He's somebody who certainly took political sympathy. Pardon? Dean?
I said I have sympathy too, but it's a painful sympathy. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, doctor, I have sympathy. Can you have it removed?
Go ahead.
But
yes, exactly. That's how
But he used this against a political opponent, and now he's the victim of it. And this is the same guy. I found a YouTube video where he's basically quoted saying VAWA being reinstated is a victory. And had he not been who he is, or had a staffer who was filming his estranged wife's bull-like charge at him, he'd still have a stay-away order, not able to see his kids or go to his home. So I want to know, what I want to know, and I'll probably never know, is I would love for an actual journalist to get in this guy's face and say, so what do you think about VAWA now that you've been on the other end of it? I mean, I really want to know, how does this guy reconcile this?
I can tell you exactly what he would say. He would say that one circumstance, because he's obviously only aware that of this happening to him and probably not to any other men, he will probably come back out and say, if he's asked, that he thinks VAWA is a great bill and that he supports it fully, and just because he was the subject of a false allegation doesn't mean that women don't need help, and it certainly doesn't mean that men are assault victims. I don't even feel painful sympathy for this guy. I got to tell you, what I feel is more akin to not feeling for this guy anything at all. It looks good on him. I hope it damages his career. I hope that he gets made an example of, because this is part of what I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he helped create. Sympathy for some VAWA voting politician that gets slapped around by his wife and falsely accused and dragged through the mud in the media. I hope it happens to all of them, every last one of them, until they start getting, and that's when politicians notice things, is when they start happening to politicians, then all of a sudden there's a crisis and they're going to do something about it, or if it threatens to cost them votes. But this guy is not going to change course 1 degree over any of this. He's going to continue right on, and give him a couple more years and he'll be accusing another political opponent of beating his wife.
Yeah, just to give a high level, if anybody's not catching up with what we're talking about, we talked about Congressman Alan Grayson on the March 17th episode. The bottom line is his estranged wife got caught on tape physically attacking him quite severely, and that got him out of a whole bunch of false domestic violence charges, or almost certainly false charges. The irony here is, Rich, I want to feel sympathy for any victim. I'm kind of glad he got out of it, but I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure Paul is right. This guy is not going to change his tune. He didn't help create VAWA. He wasn't in Congress was created. He certainly voted for and supported its renewal. He took a strong pro-VAWA stance at the time. He got endorsed by the Feminist majority, which is a political group, the Feminist majority. They're not a majority, but that's what they call themselves.
Women in math.
Women in math majority. We're making jokes about that. Stay with us, feminists. These are jokes coming here. I know you don't understand that. But it's not a joke what happened to Congressman Grayson, and it's also not a joke. You would hope that he would have an awakening and say, am I alone in this? But he's almost certainly not. He's almost certainly not going to. Taking any other stance would be political suicide for him, and he's a hypocrite. He's probably a lot like Joe Biden, in fact. I mean, we might talk about this next week, but some years ago, not that long ago, Vice President Biden, who was one of the authors of VAWA, was on The View and was questioned by Whoopi Goldberg, of all people, because Joe admitted that when he was growing up, his sisters used to beat the crap out of him, and yet he stays with the line, there's no ever excuse for a man to hit a woman, period, end of story. And she actually went after him and asked him 2-3 times, what about men who hit women? And he wouldn't answer.
You mean what about women?
I'm sorry, what about women who hit men? Yeah, that's what she asked. To her credit, she asked, and she asked a couple of times because she knows women can be violent. Whatever else you think of her Hollywoody liberal views, she knows this because I've heard her say it before too. And he wouldn't answer, and I don't think this guy would either. And it's a shame because we ought to admit that it's a problem. So I guess I'm reluctantly glad he got out of it, but maybe not. I mean, I don't know. It's like lose. If he lost, if he went out of office, if he lost his job and lost his kids and all that, then that would just be more victory for VAWA. But of course, if he stays and doesn't disavow VAWA, that's still more victory for VAWA. It's just sickening all the way around.
Well, I'm really in a dilemma about it. Other than Ron Paul and Barry Goldwater, I never saw a politician that I didn't think should rot in hell. So.
You Romulans, Ron Paul nuts. That's okay. hopefully sanity will reign one day. I guess for Congressman Grayson's children's sake, I'll say I'm glad it went down this way, but certainly not for Congressman Grayson or any other politician, Republican or Democrat, who voted to renew that atrocity, the Violence Against Women Act. Okay, speaking of violent women, we have several stories related to academia this week. I would like to go ahead and start with a piece written by Professor Thomas Impeluso of San Diego State University that appeared on A Voice for Men. We published his piece. He's a professor of engineering, actually, and he published this piece called Men, Math, and Masculinity on March 10th, and within a few days he was getting a barrage of hateful emails, threats, phone calls, contacts to not just him, but his wife, his kids, other faculty, all basically condemning him and threatening him for this piece. Now, Tara, I don't know if you read this piece or not. I know you're busy. It's called Men, Math, and Masculinity.
Math was in the title, so I didn't even click on it. I'm kidding.
Well, you're a girl. You don't understand math anyway, right? He makes a very, I mean, really very mild and not very controversial case. I mean, real controversy would be, oh, this is worth discussing. No, but just the case that there's one that in the top 1% of mathematical achievement, which, by the way, he says he's not in that top 1%, but he says there's some reason to think that the male brain may be more likely to produce that top 1% of ability in math than the female brain, and so probably at the very elite top of the math field, you will probably always see fewer women. And
I agree with that, and I don't think it's a sexist belief to hold. I think it's based on biology, and that there are brain differences.
It's the same reason that we see when people question why is Congress predominantly men? Why are CEOs predominantly men? A lot of, well, no feminists, some people, but no feminists seem to understand the spread of intelligence, how it works. You've got geniuses on one end and very, very low intelligence in the other, and both of those areas are heavily dominated by men. The reason that we have more mathematical geniuses that are men and more CEOs and more driven people to do things like politics and that are smart enough to do them is because most of the really intelligent people are male. It's the same reason that prisons are full of men, at least the ones who deserve to be there, of low intelligence and that are aggressive. It is just women are much more on an even plane in intelligence. On average, it comes out, my understanding, about the same. Women are about as intelligent as men and vice versa. But the concentration of brilliance on that end of the spectrum is predominantly male, and you can not like that. I mean, but I would suggest either taking that up with God or Darwin, depending on your beliefs, because that is the way things are.
Well, and it's pretty funny too. He's even being more mild than what you just said. I mean, you go back to his original essay, and he says the top 20%. There's plenty of women, and he counts himself in the top 20%, not the top 1%. He said there's plenty of women in the top 20% who can do great things in math. He's told me privately that half of his students are women. He gets along great with them. They do just fine in his classes. That in fact he blind grades his tests. So he's apparently PC enough to think he might be biased somehow. So he blind grades his tests and doesn't even know the sex of the paper while he's grading it. And he says as many women pass his class as men do, because he's not doing that level of top 1% math. He's doing basic calculus stuff. And his female students just do just fine. He also reports to me personally that none of his female students or male students thought there was anything wrong with his damn essay. but they tried to shut him down and they tried to make him stop. Well, it didn't work. You know, he just wound up publishing another piece called Men, Math, and Masculinity Part 2, answering his critics' ludicrous claims. You'll find that on the front page of A Voice for Men now, but now it's called Men, Math, and Masculinity Part 2. Go read it. It's a very mild rebuke, just saying, well, you people are full of it. I think the only mistake he made in his follow-up essay on that was not being more rude to his critics, because his critics should just plain go to hell. They are fascist thugs, is what they are. In fact, I just see today, within the last 24 hours, I see tweets to San Diego State University from a number of feminists, including someone called Rabid Feminist, saying, attacking him, another one saying the war on the female by the male continues. This is what this professor has to say to his women students. It's ludicrous. They're clearly trying to publicly and privately shame him. I got news for you, ladies and gents. He's not going to be shamed. He's not going to be shut up, and he's not going to go away. And fuck you, because he didn't say anything.
Themselves.
He also had the audacity to make a joke about how there's certain things you can do in calculus where you can calculate, you know, see how calculus works by when a guy pees, you could see the direction the stream goes. And he was making a joke, but that offended them. That is supposedly sexist.
Everything offends them. Let me clarify something, Dean. When I was talking about the spread of intelligence, I was referring, I'm playing off directly off of what you said, to the upper 1 percentile. I have no doubt that he's correct that in the top 20% there's plenty of women, and I know plenty of women. I know women like Allison Tiemann, who's about 17 and a half times smarter than I am. I'm not denying that there's a lot of intelligence and intelligent women out there. That's not the point. But when we're talking about genius in that upper 1 percentile, like I said, we can argue it all day long. We can call it sexist. But if it's sexist, then our mere existence is sexist, because that's the way human beings are designed. And it's not Thomas M. Peluso's fault. And I will wager, though, that the feminists doing all the tweeting and outrage aren't in the top 20%.
Of any kind of intelligence.
Of any
no,
kind
not
of
even
intelligence.
emotional. Not even so-called emotional intelligence, which in also makes a case that women may tend to be better at that, which is why you might find them in funky, weird fields like psychology. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. Well, but they wouldn't be offended by that, I'm sure, right? Women are more emotionally intelligent in some ways. That wouldn't be sexy.
I don't believe that either. But
Neither do I.
Well,
I don't believe it for a second.
I will. In fairness, I think there's something to it. But in fairness, Dr. T, you might have to admit you spend more time dealing with dysfunctional women and their aftermath than the average person. So.
Well, let's really go out on a limb here, Dean. Define emotional intelligence. What is it?
I actually. It is the ability to intuit what is motivating somebody else, which people with like Asperger's and autism have virtually no ability to do, or very little ability. It is the ability to read somebody's expression, to read their body posture, to intuit what they're thinking. Of course, that might also make you more prone to projection, but there's reason people are somewhat better at that. I mean, that's probably where the ancient idea of women's intuition comes from. Maybe they're a little better by nature at spotting a lie, a little better at spotting something, but it's a small thing, right? It's not like no men can do that and all women can do that. But
I'm sure that came in very handy in the landing of the rover on Mars.
Well, no, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. But it might make at least some women a little more prone to being good at certain helping professions. So what? Is that not okay? I don't see why it wouldn't be.
I don't have a problem with it. I would like to see the evidence. Most, and I will say most, because it's certainly not all, most of the best therapists I have known have been men. There are exceptions to that. We are in the company of one now. But I don't know. When I look at the body of literature that men have created over history, when we go back to Shakespeare and you look at all the great poets and songwriters and people that masterfully articulated the human emotional state, it's a whole lot of guys. It really is, and so again, this isn't a contest. It's not. I mean, I think feminists make it a contest by having something to prove all the time, and I think that we are certainly training women in this culture to believe that there's a gender war every time they're competing with a man for anything. But this stuff is a lot of silliness, but it's resulted in a lot of thugs out there in feminist land, which we're going to be talking about more in the next story.
Well, yeah, and there's the bottom line. I have seen some studies that indicate the way their brains are wired might make them better at certain types of emotional intuition. But you know what? It's debatable, and that's the thing. Sane people can debate it and talk about it and look at it and say, well, is there some truth to that, or isn't there, and have a calm discussion about it. These thugs want this man shut down for even having these thoughts and having the audacity to utter them. And they want to slander him and vilify him and shut him down. And that's thuggery. That's just plain thuggery. It is the very opposite of what liberal is supposed to be. It's the very opposite of what the university campus environment is supposed to be. And speaking of universities in California, at the University of and thugs and real thuggery, we have the University of California Santa Barbara campus, where Professor, I'm going to say her name wrong, and I'm sure she'll declare it racist or something, Professor Marie Miller-Young. I think I've said that right. Marie or Marile. I think it's Marielle. Could be either one. I think she's Hispanic, though. Miller-Young was charged with one misdemeanor count of theft, of battery, and of vandalism. So that's three cases of vandalism, or three misdemeanors that she's facing. We have the YouTube video of that in the news section of A Voice for Men. The link will be in the low bar here of this video. The title is Violent Feminist Censorship on University of California Santa Barbara Campus Results in Criminal Charges. And you can watch that video, and it's rather remarkable. You have a couple of young women who are pro-lifers, and I don't think any of us are interested here in debating the pro-life, pro-choice stuff, but they're clearly exercising their free speech rights, protesting abortion, and this professor slash thug, I'm going to call you again a thug, Professor Miller-Young, a thug, a bully, Professor Miller-Young of University of California, Santa Barbara, assaulted these girls, took their signage and ran off with it, and as the girls chased them with their camera phones, got it all on tape, and they just walk away and stole their stuff so that they could not spread their message, their pro-life message.
And she assaulted them in the process.
So we're talking about theft, battery, and vandalism, all three of which she's been charged with. Hopefully all three of which she'll be convicted of, at least certainly the theft and vandalism, because it's right there on tape. So she can only get off on a technicality or because she's a woman. I can't think of any other way she gets off of at least those two. I didn't see film of the assault, so I don't know about that part. What is it with these people, with these feminist thugs, who think it's their right to just silence people by any means necessary?
You think they're bossy or something.
They are, aren't they?
They're very bossy.
I'm not letting that one go, ever.
I don't blame you. I think maybe they also got a message back in 2012 from the Toronto police that they could do whatever the hell they want, and the cops would do absolutely nothing about it, which is what, I mean, the protesters at Warren Farrell's talk at the University of Toronto in September of 12 was 100 times worse. I mean, they assaulted police at that thing, and no arrests were made.
I think
maybe
in academia, these types of professors, like Miller Young, they've had a stranglehold on the narrative for such a very long time. And for years, all they've had to do is say, misogyny, and they could destroy someone's career or just effectively silence them. And that's not working as much anymore. And they're having full-on temper tantrums, it seems like.
I actually think that the reaction to Professor Impeluso's piece may tie into this to the extent of, I think these thugs are starting to panic a little bit because they don't have a stranglehold on the narrative anymore, and so they're going to do anything they can to shut down anybody who talks about them. We're going to see what happens. I know that Paul is referencing some violent feminist activities at the University of Toronto in September 2012 at a Canadian Association for Equality event. This week, in a couple of days, we're going to see something at Queen's University in Ontario and at the University of Ottawa. Two different speeches are going to be given about feminism and double standards. Janice Fiamengo, who we've interviewed before and will probably interview again, is going to be giving the same presentation at two different universities called What's Equality Got to Do with It? Men's Issues and Feminism's Double Standards. I'll be interested to see if the thugs show up to try and silence and shut her down too, because they don't care who they shut down. Just like they shut down, they did shut down these two pro-life people, these pro-life protesters. That was women shutting down women. That was women silencing women. Don't you love the irony of that part too?
You have to understand that non-feminist women are not like real women. I mean, they have vaginas and everything. Yeah, they have the biology, but real women are feminists. It's the same thing, as a matter of fact. You know, we've been told for years that if we criticize feminism, that it means we have something against women. They make themselves synonymous with woman. So those weren't real women out there protesting abortion. They were
tools of the patriarchy.
Tools of the patriarchy, gripped in the false consciousness of the patriarchy, the brainwashed masses. Well, I mean, you have to admit, we do know that Paul Elam is in fact in the same building with Tara, and she knows full well that he will beat her if she doesn't say what, you know, as soon as we're off camera. I don't even know what to say anymore. Is that when is society going to wake up and realize what thugs these people are and stop pretending, well, you know, all sides are equally bad? When have you ever seen men's rights activists trying to shut down anybody from speaking? When has that ever happened? I'd really like to see it.
We did see in one case, there was, I think it was at Occidental, if I'm not mistaken. There were some "Don't Be That Guy" posters that got ripped down. I issued a statement disagreeing with that vehemently. I think we need to put up our own posters. We don't need to deface theirs. We don't need to remove theirs. Feminists, like them or not, have a right to their opinion. Unfortunately, part of their opinion is that nobody else has a right to their opinion. But I think we deal with that just by continuing to speak, not by trying to shut them down.
Yeah, for the record, we don't know who tore those posters down, and we don't approve. We even published an editorial saying that. We published two statements saying that. We don't approve. But in any case, yeah, as a rule, but even still, tearing down a poster versus blockades and attempts to get people fired and not letting people into buildings and pulling fire alarms and contacting their families. I mean, it's just sickening. And I really hope society wakes up to how sickening they are.
Dean, I think that's a perfect seg into the story that I'm bringing here, which is that maybe things are changing a little bit. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to say maybe. I think they are changing and they may be changing very rapidly, as these things tend to do once they get started. At Queen's University, which is in
Ontario.
Kingston, Ontario, yes. They attempted, the feminists there attempted to de-ratify, a nice little clean euphemism for get rid of, the Men's Issues Awareness Society that has already been established on that campus. And the response from the Alumni Advisory Association that held a meeting on it was, what's your problem? And it was rejected, the idea of de-ratifying them was rejected flatly. Now you put that alongside what happened at Ryerson, where they went in and preemptively made sure that nobody could start a men's issues group because they're all a bunch of misogynists who want to do that. This is a big first, and we're seeing, I think, a lot of big firsts. We talked about this on the mainstream media show with Warren and Tom. We talked a lot about the report issued to the White House by RAINN, the largest, which is the Rape and Incest National Network. It is the largest anti-sexual violence organization in the United States, probably the world. And they issued a statement to the White House saying rape culture is bullshit.
Oh, and Jessica Valetti and Amanda Marcotte and other feminists were not happy with that.
No, they're not happy with that. And we're going to see. I mean, the good thing about all this is that feminists are really our best friends. As long as they're ripping posters out of people's hands, assaulting them, assaulting police, trying to bully people, trying to shut down their free speech, which is what they're doing. I mean, it's right out there in the open. We can all see it, and the world sees it very much so. That's why things are changing. That's why more and more people are saying feminists are nuts. Even people that are saying MRAs are nuts, but I don't believe in feminism. They're at least saying I'm not going to go to either end of that spectrum and participate in any of that, and more of them, of course, are coming over to sort of our side of things. But there is real change going on. I thought it was shocking that a group of people in a Canadian university not only rejected the idea of de-ratifying the Men's Issues Awareness Society, but they basically gave them a, what the fuck are you even trying to do? What's wrong with you people? We're not de-ratifying anything. And they issued a statement saying that it was an attempt to abridge free speech, and they weren't going to participate in it. We've never seen these kinds of events. We've got the Wall Street Journal now. There's a gentleman there named Toronto that is writing articles that could be penned by the most unrepentant of MHRAs at A Voice for Men at any time. The material is in tone, is dedicated to these ideas in the same way that we are. We're seeing increasingly strongly worded work by Barbara Kay at the National Post about the corruption.
Magazine.
Yeah, there's a lot going on that's saying that people are starting to get to the point where they're saying no more of this stuff. We're not going to put up with it. And now we have a university professor in one of the most liberal schools of the entire world that have just been sent the message that if you try to shut down people's speech in this way, we're going to give you a criminal record. Hey, man, I think life is good. There's a lot of craziness still going on out there, and I am going to toot a horn, and I'm not doing it for myself, but for the like 25 people that help at A Voice for Men, and people like Dr. T and Angry Harry and so many others that have been involved in counter theory for so long. What we're doing is starting to work. You can't tell me that this doesn't have anything to do with the men's movement. It has everything to do with the men's movement, and it's going to continue to grow.
I'll tell you too. I mean, we still get this "you're just like the feminist" thing, and I still hear it. I heard it again recently from someone I approached to reprint one of those articles, and she's like, I'm anti-feminist, but I don't, want to see another victim movement like feminism just for men. That's just going to make it worse. Well, okay, I can understand that perception. I don't think it's a fair perception at all. I'll tell you right now, though, unlike somebody like Gloria Allred, I will never say if you're not an MRA, an MHRA, if you're not a men's rights activist, you're a bigot. No, nobody's obligated to self-identify with this movement. Nobody. I don't, I see myself as a human rights, somebody who cares about human rights, who specializes in men's and boys issues, because that's where I perceive the greatest need. I don't think anybody's obligated to identify with our movement. Why should they be? Just like there's no cause that you have to ally with, even if you broadly agree with its tenets. That's one of the things that's wrong with feminism. They think they own women. They think they own the dialogue, and they have the right to shut anybody out who dissents. But I don't know. I'm getting off the topic, but no, we're not the same. I don't think. What are we asking for versus what they're?
I think one of the big differences between the men's human rights movement and feminism as a collective is that we actually identify and oust our nutters instead of embracing them and allowing them to, I don't know, pass legislature or do other things that affect millions of lives. The men's human rights movement, to a large extent, polices their group in a way that feminism never has. I mean, Valerie Solanas, they've raised to some type of deity. This is a nut job who shot Andy Warhol. She was out of her freaking mind, and she's a hero. Lorena Bobbitt,
hero.
I mean,
make her hero, or they say she doesn't matter, or she didn't really mean it.
Bullshit. They have conferences in her honor. She matters.
Yeah. And on A Voice for Men, we do call out our nutters. You advocate violence even a little bit, you're out the door. We've published at least 2 or 3 essays on people identifying as MRAs, telling them, no, we don't want anything to do with you. You're not of us, you're not part of us because of things they do that we consider morally repugnant or reprehensible, or just plain nutty. Whatever. I want to see feminists doing that. Unfortunately, that's the problem. I love Christina Hoff Sommers, but I think one of these days she's got to realize she keeps self-identifying as a feminist and trying to reform it. Dr. Hoff Sommers, love your work, but it's a lost cause. It's just a lost cause. The nutters have run this thing from day one, and they're still running it, and I don't know. Now I'm just pontificating, I guess.
I got a thought I'd like to share about that, because I've encountered the You're Just Like Feminist crowd for years now. Love those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, if you think the men's movement, and you hear a lot of this in the PUA community. I see it sometimes in the Facebook comments and every once in a while on the site. You guys are acting just like feminists. Well, if I got a lobotomy and started advocating for the death penalty for false accusations, maybe you would have a point. But here's the deal. I hate to spell this out in condescending terms, but I'm going to be condescending anyway. Talking about problems is not just like feminism. Identifying injustices is not just like feminism. The problems that we have with feminism is the elitism, it is the gynocentrism involved in it, it is the use of legislation and money and political power at the expense of men that we have a problem with. There is nothing in the men's rights platform that is anything like that. I have never seen anything like that in the men's rights platform. So all of you that love to pop in every time we talk about the fact that there is a under-addressed problem of sexually assaulted men and domestically abused men, saying that's just like feminists, man, go back to 3rd grade, 2nd grade, wherever it was you actually did start learning how to read, and start over again and start reading through the literature until you actually figure out what's going on. Because the idea that the people in the men's movement are like feminists is stupid.
I would add to that, not only do we identify problems, as opposed to feminism where they invent problems that either don't exist or they greatly exaggerate them to get more funding, more attention, and to take more rights away from men and children.
Yeah. I mean, we're asking for equality under the law. Such a radical thing. We're asking that fathers have equal time with their children as mothers do. I mean, these are not.
We should ask feminists to practice radical acceptance for that. Something I'm sure they're familiar.
I will remember once getting into a conversation where I suggested that there's evidence that women may commit about 1/3 of sexual assaults, and men may commit about 2/3, which is, there's evidence for more than that. That's all I really said. And I was accused of being just as bad as the feminists for suggesting that women commit sexual assault. And I said, how can I be just as bad as the feminists for saying women are almost as bad? And of course, there was no response. Now, in point of fact, it's still an open debate, but there's even evidence that they may be at parity. But it shouldn't be relevant. But somehow, just suggesting that women might be bad makes me as bad as a feminist. What? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I think people are starting to get it, though. I think one of our goals as a movement will be to cease to exist as a movement because we're not needed anymore. Hopefully that'll happen in my lifetime, and we can start seeing people as human beings. Hey, there's a radical thought.
As long as we're on the outing the nutters bandwagon, let me add one more to the list. Is some of the people out there that may be somewhat sympathetic to what we do or to some of these ideas are also sort of in the Peter Nolan crowd. I've seen them over at Return of Kings, which is a website which has some fairly thought-provoking stuff. They're going for the sort of He-Man, real man market, alpha dog kind of thing, sort of, let's showboat with each other about how alpha we are. But there's a lot of guys over there that come up with the line, I read this there and I just loved it, you don't ask for rights, you take them. So I want to invite you guys that are into taking your rights. The next time you end up in a family court, I invite you to take your rights in there. You go into that family courtroom, don't plead your case, don't get a lawyer, don't ask that your case be recognized. Just walk into the courtroom and tell the bailiff and the judge that you're there to take your rights, because that's what a man does.
Next time you're falsely accused of rape, go ahead. Let's see.
Yes. Go take your reputation back when you're and take your education back if they kick you out of school from one of their star chambers. I'd like to invite all you take your rights guys to give us an example. I want to see, because see, I've never read a news story about a guy taking his rights from anybody. The closest thing I've come is, some guy going off the deep end and ending up dead with police bullets. But if you guys are out there that know how to take your rights, please write us an article for AVFM, because we're so clueless over here on how we do that. We really need the help. So give us a take your rights article, and we will help get it to thousands and thousands of men that will be able to go out and walk up to the U.S. government and to all the guns and all the police and all the university officials and all of society and take what they got coming to them.
Maybe they could start a Take Back Your Rights Nights rally.
There you go.
I will tell you one way you can take your rights. And by the way, Paul is serious. You come up with that article, we will run it. And, we may critique it or we may decide you're right. But I'll give you an easy starter. There is one way, there's two ways you can take your rights. You can, of course, go MGTOW, although that has its limits. But there's one way you can absolutely take your rights, and that is to refuse to shut up. Refuse to be bullied into silence. Just like Thomas Impeluso is refusing to be bullied into silence, just like we on A Voice for Men refuse to be bullied into silence. You can't shut us up. You really can't. Actually, you have one way to shut me up. You know what it is? kill me. I'm otherwise never shutting up about any of this until these problems are addressed. I will not shut up. I don't care what you have to say to me or about me or what you try to do. I won't shut up.
And that
So
doesn't
there's
matter
taking
to
your
me
rights.
if you're a feminist or you're a white knight or if you're an alpha dog. Not shutting up for anybody.
That's right. That's right. Okay, well, we've been going about 45 minutes. It's about time to wrap this up. I want to remind everybody that AVFM is running its quarterly fundraiser. What we do here is, does cost money, does cost time, it's exhausting, and it does take resources. And so if you have a chance to pop something into the PayPal jar, you'll find the fundraising information. Actually, the PayPal tip jar is on Paul's YouTube page where you're watching this. You'll also find it on A Voice for Men. I'll also take this time to remind people that we are still doing the conference in Detroit in late June. We hope to see you all there. All three of us will be there. Paul and Tara will both be giving separate presentations, along with a whole bunch of other people. Get your tickets now.
I think Paul and I are also going to be doing a small workshop as well, which we haven't figured out yet, but we will.
Yeah, we know who the speakers are. We don't
workshops. There is one that is figured out on the conference. The conference proper is the 27th and 28th of June, starting at 9 in the morning. But on the 26th of June, for those that arrive a day early, there will be a much more intimate setting, a workshop by Dr. Warren Farrell. We will be making an announcement about that soon on the site. There will be ticket sales for that separately. Also that night, there will be open to the public, so anybody can come in for free. There's going to be the International Press Conference, where we're going to have our news director, our new news director, Jim Bisett, and our entire news team, Robert O'Hara, Anil Kumar, Dr. Greg Canning, several others. Our news department's gotten so big I can't even name them all off the top of my head right now. But they're going to be there. We're going to invite the local media, and we're going to have an open discussion about issues of how men are treated in news media. And that promises to be a very, very interesting discussion, hopefully with as many local media as we can attract to the event. Ticket prices are going up tomorrow. Go to the site, get it today.
Yep, you'll save money if you get in with the early bird price right now. And I'll go ahead and mention the paperwork's in process. We believe we're going to be able to offer continuing education units for people in the social work and psychology field. That paperwork's in process, and it looks like it's going to go through just fine. Can't say it for sure until it's the final stamp of approvals on it, but we've met all the requirements. That's probably going to happen. Stay tuned for more information on that.
CEUs for FTSU. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that.
And you get a discount off of next year's conference if you videotape your feminist supervisor having to accept your CEUs for FTSU.
No, you will get in free.
You heard him, folks. You quoted him. Oh, that's so fucking funny. Oh, my God. Yes. Hey, it's almost like we're a growing and succeeding movement, isn't it?
Your feminist-run social work department is going to love that. Do it.
I am so
all right,
looking
guys.
forward to
announcement.
signing off.
I have something.
I'm going to bring a special pin to sign off on those CEUs when people attend. And
I'll bring some lipstick and at the bottom of that.
And then know where it goes.
Dr. T
What's
said,
your announcement?
Paul and I are going to try again to do our first podcast of Going Mental, focusing on men's mental health issues and relationship issues and all that stuff. Again, same time this Wednesday. We had some technical glitches that I still don't know what they were, but hopefully those will be resolved, and we're going to do our first episode this Wednesday. Is it at 4 Central? I think.
Yes, it is, and just to let everybody know, we're going to be discussing the nature of the show for a few minutes, but the main topic is going to be really abusive women, really smart guys, and really bad choices. And I don't think I even need to explain that to our audience. I bet there's a lot of guys out there know exactly what we're talking about when we give that title. So tune into that. I think you're going to enjoy it.
And this time, guys, I'll make sure I'm there to help them out in case they get in trouble. So.
Thank you. I was accused of pulling an Esme, whatever that means.
Screw you. I hate you all. Forget it. I hate you all. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm being persecuted. I'm going to be silenced.
I feel so good about the movement, and then I got to deal with the fact that we refer to a technical botch with the name of the guy that we depend on the most for technical support.
Not right. It's not fair. We're sorry.
Okay, we'll call it something else.
All right, and also you've got an interview with Alyssa Majiri coming up this week too, Paul. I believe that's tomorrow, isn't it? Or is it Wednesday? Can't remember. Alice, I'm sorry. Every time I see her name, I think
Alyss, and I kept trying to force that A at the end of it myself, but there isn't one. It's pronounced Alice. If you have not seen Alice Majere, that's Majere on YouTube, you owe it to yourself for her definition of feminism alone, and her most recent release, which was a much more personal story, is just absolutely outstanding. Must listen to stuff. Very interesting person. And
it really is. Case on Rape is the one you're talking about, I think. And yep.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if you are involved in, or think you may be involved in, an abusive relationship with a woman, be sure to check out shrink4men.com for more general FTSU action where we take on the gender ideologues. See the front page of avoiceformen.com. New stuff appearing every day. See you next week on next Monday's Intelligence Report. Bye-bye, all.
Bye.
Bye.